Gianbetti Forti here, from Solutions 30. I'm together with Amaury Boileau, CFO of the group, and we are here to comment our financials 2018. First of all, the company has today about 8,000 people that are working in the field. A little bit more than 5,000 are full-time employees, and the rest are independent freelancers. We make about 40,000 interventions per day, and we had a very nice growth in 2018, as you have already seen in the previous press releases related to our revenues. So revenues growth in 2018 was plus 61%. The good news is that we managed to keep the operational margins stable. We improved them slightly, but let's say stable, which is really not easy in a year where the growth is so strong. So our operations have done a very good job. And on the money side, we have also been quite good in the management of our cash. So even though the growth was very strong and we did 6 acquisitions in 2018, we managed to keep our cash consumption under control, and therefore our balance sheet at the end of 2018 is substantially stronger than what we had the previous year, which means that we have all the money needed to finance our growth and keep growing as we did in the past. I will comment quickly our acquisitions of 2018. We have done 6 operations. One with DXC Technology, that's the former Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. They decided to outsource our operations in Italy. So they outsourced these operations to us. We signed a 5-year contract, which provides a very stable stream of revenues in Italy. And this was done in March 2018. In July 18, we have done a similar operation of outsourcing with Telenet, the second telecommunication operator in Belgium. They have outsourced their after-sales activities to us. They are worth 70 million euro per year. We have added to this activity 20 million euro revenues that we had already in Benelux. So the combined activity is about 100 million euro per year, and the legal entity realizing this activity has now Telenet as minority shareholder at 30%. The outsourcing contract is a contract that has a duration of 7 years, but of course it's the kind of activity that we believe we stay there for a very long time, because the connection now between ourselves and Telenet is very strong. At the same time, always in Benelux, we have taken 100% of Janssen's Field Services, which was our local subsidiary. We had minority shareholders in the subsidiary, and we have taken over the subsidiary at the same time than the signature of the contract with Telenet. In Spain, we have done, one deal worth 10 million euro revenue, Salto, and then Magaez, which had very small revenues, but the rationale for the two is the same. In Spain, the country has invested significantly in telecommunications infrastructure. This process began in 2009. The economy was very bad and prices were therefore very bad, so we didn't join. But now the economy in Spain is much better, and basically these 2 companies are 2 companies that survived the crisis, and it's much more efficient for us to get back to the market to acquire Salto, which has as major client MásMóvil, a national operator in Spain that is heavily deploying fiber, and Magaez has a relationship with Vodafone that we had also in the past, but not in the same region. So basically, through Magaez, we gain new regions with Vodafone as a client. And then the last two are two acquisitions we have done in France, in southern France, southeast and southwest. It was the last two small independent companies providing services to Orange, and we have acquired them to strengthen our relationship with Orange that is investing heavily in fiber in France. We are therefore one of their main providers in south of France, and thanks to that we have gained new contracts that we have begun deploying in 2019. I think I will go quickly on the next slides because they are related to the revenues that we are making, and this is something that we have already published when we published the revenues last time. Just mainly highlighting the main things. On the right side at the top, energy, there is a mistake. The current number of meters that are deployed in France is 18 million. Sorry, it's there. It's been corrected. So 19 million as of today. Yeah, fine. And the deployment of meters in France continues. So that is good news for us. We have 26% market share of this activity, and we are the largest provider of services to the French utilities. In parallel, fiber connections, that is also growing in 2019. The country deployed 1.55 million houses in 2018. We had about 40% market share of that, and we see growth in 2019. We can't tell you how much because it's a bit too early to be sure, but 19 will be growing compared to 18. And we still have a very strong position among the telecommunication operators in France. All the other activities are going nicely, and we have several tender offers ongoing in the different verticals in which we are. I will not comment this because you have it already, and you will see that all the verticals in France are going nicely. Okay, highlights of telecom activities in other countries. Just really the highlights. We have good news in Italy, where the new CEO is changing all the management. There is a new head of purchasing coming from Ericsson. He was the former general manager of Ericsson EMEA. So for us, that is good news because the company is really showing a strong commitment to get things right and go back to investing. So we expect the Italian market to be back to growth in the second half of this year, and we are organizing ourselves to be ready for that. Other good news are in Germany, where Vodafone has confirmed us a couple of weeks ago that they have a 4 billion investment plan beginning in the middle of 2020. It's a 3-year plan, so that means that they would invest about 1.3, 1.4 billion per year. 2/3 of these are in fixed network, so that includes fiber investments. So Germany is beginning to invest in fiber, and 1/3 is related to mobile networks. Mobile networks, we spoke last time. We had a presentation about 5G coming. The auctions for the frequencies are coming in all of the countries. But what we are seeing, and that is interesting for us, is that the operators are beginning to prepare themselves, in particular to prepare the sites. We have had talks with Bouygues in France. It's trivial, but it's important. They just need to make sure they have enough space in their current sites to deploy the 5G technology, that they have enough power, and then they have enough connectors available to host the new antennas. So there is work for us coming on 5G, beginning, we believe, in 2019, second half, but not significant, and then more significant in 2020 and onwards. Energy highlights in the other countries. I would say we have begun deploying charging stations for electrical vehicles in Belgium for a subsidiary of the French utility EDF. It's interesting because it confirms that we are well equipped to do this kind of activity. We are very pertinent. We are replying to, we are answering to several tender offers coming from distributor of fuel, utilities, car manufacturers, manufacturers of charging stations. So we see a market that is coming, and we are well positioned to take advantage of that. We also see the beginning of smart meters deployment in Germany. It's in pilot phase, but we are in contact with E.ON that is planning a pilot in Bavaria. So we hope that the German market will begin to move on smart meters. No comment on the next slide. You have already the information. As you can see, all the geographies have grown nicely in 2018. I leave the floor to Amaury for the financials.
Thank you, Gianbeppi. If we look a little bit back in the mirror and compare the 2018 figures with the historical figures, we can see that the high growth dynamics is still there and is even accelerating. In 2018, the revenue was 441 million euros in terms of revenues, which means that we more than doubled our revenues as compared with 2016. This growth was also profitable growth because if you see the black line on the diagram, you can see that the profitability increased by 10 basis points between 2017 and 2018 and increased by 30 basis points between 2016 and 2018. If we look a little bit more deeply into these figures, so France made a revenue of 279 million euros of revenue. This is a growth of 57%, and 2/3 of this growth was organic. The other countries grew even faster. They made a revenue of 162 million euro of revenues, and so they now represent 37% of the group revenues in 2018. 15% of the growth was organic, but it's important to mention that we included the Telenet deal as an external growth figure. So that means that if you take into account, the Telenet deal, which was actually an outsourcing deal, into the organic growth figures, then the organic growth should be 40%. So as you can see on the next slide, this growth is well balanced between organic growth on the left-hand side of the slide and external growth on the right-hand side. In France, the external growth accounted for almost 40 million euros in the revenues. So this was related to the deals that we made. So we took the pro forma effect of Fujitsu, an outsourcing contract that we signed in the middle of 2017. But you have also the effect of the acquisitions of CPCP that we consolidated starting from 1st of August this year, and also Sotranasa, which contribution is much smaller since we only acquired the company in December at the end of 2018. If you look at the other countries, external growth represented almost 54 million of our revenues. So this includes all the deals that we did in all the countries. So VKDSS, which was the former subsidiary of Vodafone. So that was the company we acquired in the middle of 2017, and we took the pro forma effect in these figures. We took also the revenues related to DXC, the outsourcing deal that we started in March this year in Italy, but also all the acquisitions that we made in Belgium. So we first increased our share in the capital of Janssen Field Services, 1st of June this year, and then just after we created a new company called Unity together with Telenet. So it's a new entity in order to provide the service to Telenet. And then at the end, you have also our last acquisition abroad, Salto, which Gianbeppi mentioned, and which contributed in the revenues for only 3 months this year. If we look a little bit a little bit below the top line, you can see that we managed to keep the operational cost at the same level as last year because of the proper execution of our acquisition plan. We managed to keep this cost at 79.3% of our revenues, and we decreased a little bit the cost of central structure by 10 basis points. As a result, the EBITDA is improving slightly by 10 basis points and now reaches 41 million euros, which is 9.3% of our revenues. Then you have the EBIT, which stands at 33.2 million euros. So that is 7.5% of our revenues as last year. And this EBIT incorporates the amortization, the operating amortizations, which are at the normative level around 1.8%. Then you can find the amortization of intangibles for 4.8 million euros as compared with 3.9 million euros in 2017. Then you have the financial results, which was of 1.7 million in 2018. This is quite stable as compared with last year, and mainly explained because of the good financing conditions that we negotiated with our banks when we implemented our new structured credit loans at the end of 2017 and in 2018, where we signed a new structured loan. Then just below you have the non-recurring items, which makes profit of 2.5 million euros this year, and which is mainly explained by the badwill that we booked on the last acquisitions, namely ADM and CPCP. Just below these non-recurring items, you have the corporate taxes, which amounts to 5.6 million euros. So this amount is a bit higher as last year. So there are two effects of this. First of all, last year we had some tax receivables that we included in our figures, and we also include in the corporate tax that we pay this year all the taxes that were related to the Telenet deal and all the restructuring that we made in our organization in Belgium. However, if we look at the tax rate at group level, it remains at 13%, which is quite acceptable. Then you have the net income of integrated companies, which improved by 30 basis points at 5.4% of our revenue. You have then the consolidated net income, which stands at 20.4 million euros, and which includes the amortization of goodwill related to our acquisition. Just below, you can see the adjusted net income group share. So this result excludes all the amortizations related to goodwills and badwills, as if we were already under IFRS. And then at the end of the table, you can see the net income group share, which stands at 20 million euros and which represents 60% of increase as compared with last year, and which represents 4.5% of our revenue. If we look now at the balance sheet, you can see that the value of our assets increased significantly because of the acquisitions and the number of visits that we did last year, as Jan Betty mentioned before. You can notice that our working capital is now negative, so it improved significantly over 2018. There are two major effects in this decrease. First of all, we deployed and we implemented a new factoring scheme in all our geographies, and now the amount of receivables that we sold to the factor stands at 51 million euros of revenues. So this factor is non-consolidating, so that means that there is non-recourse and that the receivables do not appear anymore in our balance sheet. And the second effect is related to the outsourcing deals that we concluded with Telenet and DXC in Italy. Since with the technicians that transferred to Solution 30, there are some provisions attached, which are included in the working capital calculation, but which are paid by our partners. So we have, on the asset side, we have the impact in terms of cash. As a result of all of this, you can see that our net financial debt improved significantly over 2018. Its amount was 20 million at the end of 2017, and it now stands at 12.4 million euros. So this net financial debt is composed of a bank debt of almost 82 million euros at the end of 2018, and compensated by the cash, so the 70 million euros that we have in our cash at the end of the year. It's important to mention also that our net debt over EBITDA ratio stands at 30%. This is the picture that you can take of our balance sheet at the end of the year, but keep in mind that we only take into the EBITDA the impact of our acquisitions for some months in 2018, whereas we take the full impact of the acquisition in the net debt at the end of 2018. So you could expect that this leverage goes even lower over the next month. Then last point, we have an interest cover, which is a ratio between EBIT and financial expenses of 20, which provide insurance to our bankers. If we look now at the cash flow, you can see that the cash position at the end of 2017 was 28 million euros. It's now 70 million at the end of 2018. So this change is explained by the cash flow generated by the activity of 34 million euros, which is more or less equivalent to our EBIT. Then you have a very large impact related to our working capital. So I already explained that we had the full effect of our non-consolidating factoring, but there is also another impact that we excluded on the right-hand side. So the figures that you can see in light gray, because if you make the calculation starting from our financial statements, you will calculate this 59 million impact in our working capital. But we need to exclude some earnouts which are included in the other debts and short-term debts, which amounts for 21 million euros. Okay. Then you can see in the blue box the amount of investment that we made in 2018. So 67 million euros, which can be split between our external acquisitions for an amount higher than 50 million euros. Then you have the investment that we made in our IT platform for 10 million euros, and some other investments for equipment of our technicians for an amount of 5 million. Of course, we use bank debt to finance part of this growth. And if you look at the increase of our loans net of the amount that we paid back, the increase of financing is 33 million euros. Then you have a slight capital increase of 3 million euros, which is related to the conversion of stock options into shares in 2018.
Okay, thank you, Maurice. So basically, we have 70 million euro cash available, and our structured financing gives us access to another 55, if I'm not mistaken, Maurice.
Yeah,
correct. So we have all we need to finance our growth. So what we are going to do in the coming months and years, because we the strategy is functioning, so we just want to stick to what we are doing, is to keep watching at sectors where our offer can be interesting for our large accounts. We mentioned charging stations for electrical vehicles. We mentioned 5G. So we see new things coming towards us, and we think we are well positioned to take advantage of that. We keep watching at other geographies. We are very busy with the current ones, but we keep watching and be ready for opportunities of geographical diversification. We keep our operational machine as something that is unique, meaning we want to have the same processes and the same tools in all the countries, meaning we have an integration team that works very fast on the acquisitions and turns them around quite fast to make sure that our operational model, is the same all across markets and all across geographies. And we also see that our market is still extremely fragmented, and that we have become a natural consolidator. Still well fragmented, not much competition on the acquisitions, and as you have seen, we have cash enough to do other operations if we see growth opportunities in the market. So our main actions for 2019 are broaden our activities, in particular in the energy sector, and in particular activities related to the deployment of charging stations for electrical vehicles. We have studied several geographies, and we work to prepare a new geography sometime later this year with a little bit of luck. We work to improve our margins, to deploy our best practices, best operational practices, really everywhere across the group. And we keep watching for opportunities of external growth. So that's the main actions and objectives for 2019. In terms of governance, we are preparing ourselves for a move to the regulated market in 2020, which implies that we have created additional committees under our supervisory board with a new person, Yves Kerveillant, who has joined. He's a chartered accountant and former auditor, and he will take charge of the audit committee that will be very important for us, especially next year when we will move to the regulated market. We, of course, have a remuneration committee that was already there from the past, and then we also have set up a new strategy committee that is chaired by Jean-Paul Cotet, who is a former member of the executive board of Orange Group. In the management board, you see 3 faces and not 4 like last year. The missing one is Olivier Raguin, who was assistant CEO to Karim. He's still very close to the company, but he has had a bad family problem this last year in 2018, and he's still collaborating with us, and we can employ him on missions, but he does not have the time to be here with us full time, unfortunately. So this is why you see 3 people. But at the same time, we also wanted to show you the rest of the managers that are contributing to our growth. So an executive committee that has been formalized this month in April 2019. I encourage you to go to our new website, where you will see our policy, a new policy in terms of governance for both the supervisory board and also for the management board and the executive committee. You will see that in the executive committee, we have people who work at group level and then also people who work at country level. So in total, we have between 15 and 20 people who are important and very committed to the development of our group. Midterm objective, reach 1 billion of revenues. We said it already, so we keep this as midterm goal. The difference is that the more we go, the more we see it coming close. So we see quite well now how to reach it, and that is basically getting all the geographies at the size comparable to France, knowing that in each of the geographies in which we are, we do have the potential to reach that size. So that's all. Expect 2019 good, both in terms of growth and in terms of profitability. Now it's open. The session is open for Q&A. So the floor is yours. If you have questions, please go ahead. Okay, so we have one question relating to recruitment. And the question is, do you have issues in recruiting people? And the answer is no. Well, not no 100%. I would say no 80%. I explain. We see some companies that have a hard time recruiting engineers. We do not recruit engineers. We recruit technicians, meaning people that have a lower formal education. We then have an internal school and strong processes to make sure that these people can become productive quite fast. So when you look at the employment rate of young people across continental Europe, it remains quite high. And therefore, we do not have difficulties finding such people, and then we are capable to train them and get them into production quite fast. I said 80% because we have an exception in Germany. In Germany, it's not easy to find people, especially in south of Germany. But as I said already last time, we managed to find people who speak some German outside Germany, and then we bring them to Germany to take them into production. So overall, finding people is not a constraint for our growth.
Okay. Then we have another question regarding our factoring financing conditions. So, today we have pan-European deconsolidating factoring contracts with 2 banks, and the financing conditions are the same. We pay 1% interest rate per year. So that means that this is very, very cheap. By the way, if we look at the midterm financing conditions, as Gianbeppi said earlier, we negotiated in December 2018 a new structured loan with 7 banks, which the total amount of this loan is 130 million euros. So 75 million of this loan has been used in order to refinance our credit debt and to finance our acquisitions on the H2 of 2018, and that leaves 55 million in order to finance our future external growth policy, in addition of the cash that we generate from our activity.
Okay, so we have another question. Why was the use of factoring increased if there was no big need per se from the cash perspective?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Well, we only work for big customers, telco operators, utility, big utility companies, and usually we are paid between 60 and 90 days. On the other side, our expenses are very short term. We need to pay salaries, we need to put fuel in our cars, and so when we are doing 60% growth, we just wanted to secure our cash in this phase. So that's why we use factoring. And today, we only pay 1% per year, which is very cheap, as you have seen in our financial results. The impact is very low, and that's why we use factoring.
Yeah, I would add that basically a year when you do 60% growth is really not easy to optimize everything. So we decided to be on the safe side and be sure that we have all the resources to finance our short-term needs. Okay, so then we have a question related to charging stations. We have begun signing contracts to deploy charging stations for electrical vehicles. In which countries? Who are the contract partners? Signed volumes and time frame. Expected market potential in development or deployment of charging stations. Okay, yeah. So we are deploying charging stations for the Belgian subsidiary of EDF. It's not big volumes, so it's nothing significant in terms of revenues at group level. We also signed quite recently a partnership with a subsidiary, French subsidiary of EDF, in charge of mobility. So basically, we are the preferred partner of EDF for the deployment of charging stations. Small volumes also for this French subsidiary. So I would prefer. I think the best approach is not to include any revenues related to that in 2019. There will be some, but minor. And then we will begin adding revenues related to that in 2020, 2021. It's really a little bit too early to tell you how much. In terms of market potential overall, what we are seeing is that our clients plan one charging station per 10 vehicles. So by and large, a European country will need, I would say, 5 to 10 million charging stations to make sure that all the owners of electrical cars can use them regularly. So that's for sure long term. 5 to 10 million charging stations in a country means an investment of 5 to 10 billion. So we are talking about large markets. Maybe another thing I can add is that we segment this market in three parts. Charging stations that are in public places, mainly is on the highways and public parking places. And then there are charging stations that are in private places, which means in our garage and in the companies where we work at the office. I would say that the first segment makes 20% of the market and the other two 80%. We would focus on the 80% side because it's big volumes, but also because it's smaller interventions. So we are well equipped and well organized to be a significant player in this space.
Okay, yeah. Then we have a series of three questions. So first question is, will you increase your factoring going forward? Well, we are still deploying. We are using now, it's part of our processes, and it's very useful when we acquire a new company, because usually we buy small companies which have poor financing conditions, and it's very often a way to secure the cash position in this new company. So yes, we will continue to use factoring in 2019 at least. Then the second question.
Number of shares and EPS. Well, number of shares, you had the information page 30. There was a little increase in the number of shares because of the exercise of stock options, and also a tiny increase related to the M&A that we did in 2018. The total number of issued shares, including the fully diluted basis, is 104,997,392. It's page 30 of the presentation. Earnings per share, I don't have it.
Okay, and then we have a question. Could you please provide a bridge from reported to adjusted net income? Okay, headline suggests 20 million. reporting net income, but in the text press release you have 18 million. You are totally correct. Well, the adjusted net income is an IFRS presentation, so we only deduct from the net income the amortization of goodwills and badwills, because under IFRS GAAP, these amortizations are not accounted for. So that means that we just take off the 4.8 million of amortization of badwills and the 3.3 million of amortization of goodwill. That's the only difference. But that is totally correct. The numbers in the table in the headline and in the press release of 20 million was correct, and there was a little mistake when we mentioned the 18. So please keep in mind the 20 million euros.
Yeah, then next question is 1 billion revenues, while keeping operating margins at the current level. Well, actually, we hope to increase our margins while reaching 1 billion. It's just that it's really not easy to improve margins when you do 50, 60, 40% growth. So during a year where the growth is around 50%, expect stable margins. But overall, I would say that the more, the larger the size in our geographies, the better our profitability. So expect overall a growth of our margins correlated to the growth of our revenues when things stabilize a little bit. Okay, elaborate on the market opportunity of 5G. What is the potential market size and share of that for Solutions 30? What is the potential in terms of revenues for you? Yeah, that's a little, well, actually that's very complicated because it's the very beginning. So our clients are preparing themselves for the auctions, but they are still, working on the business model. I'm not sure they have it clear in mind. What we understand talking with them is that the technology is quite different from 4G, and therefore you can expect where today you have an antenna to see 10 of them, which means deployment for the large European countries or of 500,000 antennas, which means an investment of a few billion euro. I would say 5, maybe 7 billion euro in a country. Very hard to tell what kind of market share we can have there, but we believe we can be very competitive in this space because the interventions to make are much lighter and smaller than the interventions that you make for a 4G deployment. Antennas are going to be very small. They talk about centimeters. So it's really something that we are capable to do with our current technicians and current equipment. So we feel ourselves well positioned to take advantage of that. Maybe what I can add is that our clients are beginning to prepare their sites, and we are beginning to participate to that. We are actually doing some work with Vodafone in Spain and with Telefonica still in Spain, but through Ericsson. So our client in Spain is Ericsson. Because it's very trivial, the operators need to prepare space in their sites, need to make sure that they have enough space to host the new equipment, they have enough power supply, they have enough connectors for the new antennas. So we are already working on that. So that is for us new revenues, but not significant at group level in 2019, but growing in 2020, 2021. The other thing that is still not clear is that besides the frequencies that have been allocated for operators, we have seen that in Germany, some of the frequencies have been allocated for some industrial companies, Bosch, I think, and BMW, among others, which means that there will be companies that will deploy private networks inside their factories. We also believe that we are well equipped to take advantage of that and participate to the deployment and maintenance of 5G technology for business clients, but it's really too early to assess how big that can be. are there any new acquisitions planned in 2019? Well, nothing finalized, but I would say that, you should expect some M&A activity in 2019 because we have several opportunities in the pipe. Then, as usual, it's a matter of luck. But the market is still very fragmented. We are active in terms of M&A. We have financial resources to do it. So, expect some other M&A activity in 2019. Who are your main competitors for charging stations? Well, lots of small companies, and then some big ones. Companies like Vinci or SPI or F5. But again, we are not the same kind of animal, so we position ourselves differently. We see them as stronger than us for charging stations in public places, but on the other hand, we see ourselves best positioned to deploy this kind of equipment in residential areas and also for business clients, small business clients. Okay. So again, I some detail concerning the market of charging stations. It's a personal interpretation of Solutions 30, but basically we believe that 20% of the market of charging stations will be related to charging stations that are in public places. So charging stations that you have on the highway where you want to stop to refuel your battery, and charging stations that are in parking places, in public parking places. That will represent about 20% of the market. The remaining 80% is going to be at your house, because when you're back home in the evening, you will need to charge your car, and the rest is going to be at the office. So you will arrive at the office and you will want to plug your car into the electrical plug to load it. So the information comes from EDF. We believe that 80% of the market will be between residential clients, garages, and private companies, at the office. And that's the part that we will target. Is there a chance to see us working with Altice SFR in France or abroad? At the moment, no. Unfortunately, we do not see any concrete opportunity to work with Altice. On the other hand, we feel SFR in France is now the weak animal, with a lot of debt coming needed to be reimbursed in a couple of years. So the scenario may change. But at the moment, no, we are not working with SFR, and we do not see any opportunity to work with them in the short term. I think we are done. There is no more questions. So thank you, everybody, for the participation. Do not hesitate to come back to us if you have additional questions. Thank you.